So, welcome everybody to our meeting today with very special guest speaker, Eva Miranda. She's joining us from the STC Rocky Mountain chapter as its president. And also she's going to be talking about LinkedIn and networking today. So without further ado, she has a lot of great things to share. So I'll hand it over to you, Eva.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm here to talk about LinkedIn's and networking, right? Networking is kind of a term, a word that everybody uses, but I feel like it's inherited like this like 1980s like schmoozy connotation with it. So I'm going to try to break that up and make it look a little bit more practical. As far as what we'll go through, I'll talk about myself for a little bit. Love doing that. We'll talk about the audience of your LinkedIn profile, who's looking at it, what are they looking for? It's really good, important to understand your audience in order to deliver good content. So we'll spend some time there. We'll talk about how to use your profile, how to use other people's profiles, what it means to talk to strangers on LinkedIn as well. And then we'll spend the last little bit talking about networking, what it is, when you do it, why you do it, everything like that. And I'll save some time at the end for questions. But again, please chime in with them as they come up while I'm talking. So who am I? I'm Eva Miranda. I went to the Metropolitan State University of Denver. My major was in technical communications with a concentration in technical writing and editing. So I originally wanted to be a teacher. And then I was like, oh, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I'll be a research librarian instead. And I didn't know anything about college. So I didn't know that you needed a master's degree to be a research librarian. And one day, like in a happenstance, I talked to someone, they're like, oh, my wife's a librarian. She got her undergrad in technical communication. I was like, great, I'll do that. And then I absolutely loved it, right? Like it helped me discover and strengthen communication superpowers, formatting, bullet lists, everything like that. While I was going to school, I worked all the time. So through high school, I had some retail jobs, I had some food service jobs. Through college, I managed to get some internships. So I still worked retail, and then I got an internship doing data entry in a very glamorous way. I was an intern for a nonprofit organization. And then about 6 months after I graduated, I got my first full-time technical writing job through someone I knew through STC. So shameless plug there. While I was a student, I joined STC because I knew that I wanted to be a technical writer, but I had no idea what that actually meant. I didn't understand the industry, the responsibilities. So I saw it as a great way to learn more about that, meet people, and they just never got rid of me. So I'm currently the chapter president for the Rocky Mountain chapter after serving a few years on the council as secretary. And then I had really cool opportunities while I was a student. I got to volunteer at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science in the image archives. And that's when I learned that I did not want to work in the image archives because there's no one there and it's really quiet. Even though there was a really cool like reproduction of a ground sloth. So my internship was really valuable, or volunteering and internships were great because they helped me discover what I didn't want to do, just as much as they helped me discover what I wanted to do after I graduated. I am now a technical writer. So after I graduated, I worked at an enterprise software company called Nextworld. That was really cool. I was writing tutorials and internal content for application developers and software engineers. For the last year, I've been at a company called Bevy. So we're in the community industry. We have a software product that enterprise companies use to manage their customer communities. So it's really cool. I manage our external help center, our internal knowledge base, as well as our implementation of a digital adoption tool, which is like the cool software walkthroughs that you close as soon as you get into a software because you're like, I totally know what I'm doing. And then you get stuck and then you reopen it later. So I also, so I live in Colorado now. I've got 3 dogs and 3 cats and some chickens. And I married a man that always reads the documentation before he starts a project, which is very humbling because I never do that. So that is about me. As I went through all of this experience, all of these things, I met a lot of people in a lot of different places. I got to be on a student panel, my peers at school. And so I really started leaning into LinkedIn as a way to learn in. learn about different people, keep track of them and everything like that. So let's talk about LinkedIn. Who is looking at your LinkedIn? Oh my gosh, so many people, but also no one. So as far as it goes, you've got different people. You've got your future team members, you've got your classmates, you've got your peers. I know several students are going up to the conference for STC. So a lot of those people that you met once might go back to your LinkedIn and be like, who was that person? What did they tell me? What do I want to know about them? So when it comes to when they're looking at your profile, there's different stages, right? So maybe you met someone and they're like, oh, right, who are they? Okay, cool. Maybe they're you're applying for a new position and the recruiter is looking at your profile, or you made it onto your second round and the people interviewing you are going to look at your profile because it's a more robust look than just your resume. A lot of it does occur during that hiring process, but also I think as a student, there's more informational aspects to it, right? So I want to learn more about this. I'm curious about what it's like to be involved in FTC. Who are the people that are involved in FTC? So anything that you affiliate yourself with on LinkedIn, people will look at you as a piece of that. So I'm talking a lot about hiring. And so one of the perks of hiring, obviously, is your resume. What goes on your LinkedIn? What goes on your resume? I see my LinkedIn profile as a broader picture, right? A resume is a focused summary of my experience that is relevant to the job or the position that I'm applying to. My LinkedIn, that's where I keep everything, right? The things that might not apply to the specific job, things that I think are really cool that I did once, that I want people to know about, that I don't want to forget about. A reflection of the connections that I have in my community or with the people that I've worked with. As far as my resume, that's where you'll be really specific. You'll give project details, you'll talk about numbers, you'll give metrics about your performance. You'll refine that list of skills that you've acquired and talk about how they relate to the job that you're applying to. So LinkedIn is a little bit more fun. I see it as a space that you can show off your personality a little bit more as well. So that's what does belong on your profile. What doesn't, though, right? So this is specific for you students. Nothing from high school needs to be on there. That's fine. It was a while ago. It was great. We all want to forget about that time. Your GPA. So I will hedge a little bit and I will say that for more technical career paths like engineering, like software engineering, it can be more important. Personally, I think that unless you had a 4.0 or like a 4.5, no one needs to know. It becomes a lot less relevant. And I have never in my professional career had anyone ask me what my GPA was. I don't know if I can tell you. I think it was okay. It was fine, but it wasn't anything special. So you are all going to graduate. So it's very important that you have your expected graduation date on your LinkedIn profile. So that way, if you are applying to things, if you are getting to know people, they know when to expect you entering the job market. After you're in the job market, people just need to know that you graduated from college. They don't need to know when. There is a little bit of an asterisk in there with grad students. I don't know too much about the academic career path. So I would have you ask someone like Kylie Jacobson, the volunteer coordinator for Summit, because she knows more than I do about that. And then languages. It's really fun to put in that, like, I know some conversational Spanish, but I never want that to come up in a job interview. So unless you can conduct like a full job interview or a full conversation in another language, I would not recommend putting it on your LinkedIn profile. I had someone once put like their Duolingo widget on there and it said like, I've completed 14 lessons in Spanish. And it's like, that's not enough to tell anybody about it. As far as maintaining your LinkedIn profile, right? So you've got things on there. You're like, cool, I'm set. I'm ready to move on with my life. Wrong. You should always be updating your LinkedIn profile. I polled the people that I work with, and this is the advice that they gave, right? So kind of like updating your resume, like you never know when you're going to need it, but your LinkedIn profile is a really cool place to keep track of the things that you're doing. And then when you're ready to turn it into a resume, you have a starting point. You don't have to start from scratch. So for me personally, every time that I accomplish it or I finish a new project or I take on a new responsibility at work, I put it on my LinkedIn profile. That's really helpful as well for when I expand my team at work. If another technical writer is going to come work with me, they can look at my LinkedIn profile and get a good idea of like what I actually do. Obviously I'm a technical writer at Bevy, but what do those responsibilities look like over time? So now let's cruise through our LinkedIn profile. I broke this down section by section so we can walk through. I'll call out some fun bullets. It's very pithy. I hope you enjoy it. So starting from the top, you've got your about, you've got your featured activity, your featured and your activity. First things first, what about your picture? What's an okay picture? This bathroom selfie, I look fabulous. Probably not something I'd keep on there. So I went for a much more polished headshot, but as you can tell, it's fun. I'm laughing. I'm hilarious. I want to come across as approachable and excited. So that's why I chose this picture. So again, put some personality on there, but no bathroom selfies, please. Get a friend to take a picture of you in front of a plain colored wall wearing a dark colored shirt. You have a headshot to use. You're in good shape. Your about section, this little summary here, I think as technical communicators, this is especially important, right? So don't add a bunch of like meaningless buzzwords, like synergistic communicator, excited about circling back and following through. What does that mean? I don't know. So I try to keep a little bit that's relevant about my work and then things that I think are important. I'm very proud to go to Metro. When I graduated, it was actually the first year that it was a university instead of a college. And it was a really cool community that's unique in Colorado. So I want people to know about that. 4 out of 5 Metro grads stay in Colorado. So that's also a huge network that I'm able to tap into, or that people are able to tap into me through. What else? Tell your story. There's an area that you can add your resume or your work samples. If you want to do that. I think it's another good place to keep things, but if you have a portfolio site, I think that's a better way to manage it. Link to that. That way you just have one place to maintain things, one place to update things. As far as your activity goes, just a friendly reminder that everything you do shows up in this section. So everything you like, everything that you comment, everything that you share, people can see that. So there is starting to be a weird part of LinkedIn that's very political, that's very opinion-based, that shares a lot of those like feel-good viral videos. I'm not saying you can't like them. I'm not saying not to go there. I'm just letting you know that do it with intention. If you want to engage that way, be mindful that people can see that. If you're connected with someone that you went to high school with that has a really weird career now, be mindful of that. So moving down your profile, you've got your experience. Whew, this is like the best part of your profile. So only put your work experience in here. There's a section for your volunteer experience. And I have some really fine examples from my profile that I've left on here before. So meaningless buzzwords, I keep using those meaningless buzzwords. Here's an example of how not to summarize your work experience. So quickly adapted to an enterprising work environment and achieved a key support role, translated company goals into customer solutions that guaranteed satisfaction. Those are great words, but they tell everyone nothing about what I want them to know, right? Like what skills did I develop in that non-relevant work experience? What was it like when I worked there? What kind of people did I meet? Again, especially as you're graduating, it's really about the skills that you have. So if you're able to translate your experience into skills, that's great. That will help you, especially on your resume. And so I had a little bit more fun with this. Well, because I'm a phone wizard too, that was the fun part. But, when I talk about working at Tony's Market, which was a grocery store, I started out in the meat department and cross-trained my way across all the departments. So that way I could connect with a customer and then work with them in the deli, in the meat department, in the produce, in the bakery, and then ring them out so I could stay with them. So I understand the customer relationship, the customer experience, and the customer journey. I was able to observe them through multiple facets and understand like what's important. Do they care about the potato salad? We spend all of our time making sure that's in the case every day. No one eats it. They think it looks gross. They'll tell me something offhand like, oh, that looks weird. So again, it's about that translation of skills, experience into skills. And for me, I am really proud of the fact that I worked customer service and retail because as a technical writer now, I'm a user advocate. So it's really important to understand what are our end users doing? What do they like? How do you connect with them? How do you understand them? And of course, anyone that has worked retail understands there's a lot of multitasking involved. You have to balance a lot of priorities, and it's very rare that you get to do one thing at a time. So those are some of my tips on how to summarize your experience. And then again, this is my fresh stuff. This is my technical writer experience. This is what I update regularly. I put everything in bullets. I think they're easy to read. As a technical writer, they're just fabulous. I use them every day. And the important thing here is that I can take these and put them into my resume. So, there's 3 pieces that you'll use. There's your LinkedIn, there's your master resume, and then there's your job specific resume. Each step can get more refined. So I have everything I could possibly want in very fun ways written up on my LinkedIn. That paints a broad picture of my experience. On my master resume, I have translated that experience into, more relevant, better phrasing, a little bit more professional. And then my job specific resume, I'm taking the bullets from my master resume, putting them in there, and that's tailored to a specific job posting based on what they're asking me. And again, update it all the time. Make sure you have periods on all of your bullets. I don't. Moving down your profile, you've got education and certification, right? So I have my college degree on here. I have some of my license and certifications that are mostly relevant to my career, the exception there being my notary public. But actually, I applied for a job and I made it to a final round of an interview because they were working on a notary specific product. So when I applied, they were like, oh my gosh, you're a notary. So I think it's fun. Usually it's handy just because, people need notaries. But what I don't put on here, and I drive a hard line on this, other people have different feelings. So this is very much a personal opinion, but fluff, I would much rather read through your experience and see that you have been a leader than know that you spent 30 minutes clicking through slides on LinkedIn to be a leader. So I think there are exceptions to that, especially in technical communication. It's important to get some experience or some familiarity with the software that you'll be using. So if you can find a lynda.com tutorial on InDesign, do that, put that on there. Just make it clear that you are familiar with the layout of the software and how to accomplish key tasks in it, right? Can I create a new document? Can I export it? Can I align my text? Just those basic things that help you bring it into an interview. And again, you're students, but you're not high school students. I don't need to know where you went to high school. I really don't. No one does. Moving down the profile, obviously you're all very engaged people because you're part of the FTC. So I love volunteer experience. As a student, someone told me that in order to get experience, sometimes you have to do it for free. And that's where volunteering comes in. It's not exactly fair, but that it is a good way to, and a safe place to get experience, kind of low stakes. When you're talking about your highly relevant volunteer experience, put numbers in there. I was heavily involved in fundraising. So I talk about, the year, I show growth between years to show how my responsibilities evolved or how I improved my performance. And then I talk about, how many people did I talk to? How many donations did I secure? How much money did we raise? And it should really, again, tell that story and say, oh, well, she's really good. She contacted 200 donors and a whole bunch of new donors. She must have some kind of communication skills. And sometimes you can explain the relevancy, right? So for my student panel membership, I explain it a little bit more to say, why am I putting this on here? Why is it important to me? And why was it cool? You know, not everyone knows what the CEIA is, so you get to explain that sometimes. And then as you move down, you know, I have less relevant volunteer experience. I worked at Comic-Con for a few years. It was so fun. I think that's a really fun thing that people can connect on. I designed a cover for an alumni association in an incredibly small town in Eastern Colorado. They don't need to know the details, but it's cool to have it on there. I could add more detail to my image archive volunteer time, but it's not as relevant to the career that I went down. Right, so it's cool. I love the museum. I love a lot of museums. I love history, but I decided to not include too much on here. If you volunteer for the same organization in multiple roles, try not to be too repetitive, right? I I have exactly the same few words for both of my Comic-Con experiences, and I don't need to, right? I could slim these down. I could edit it. I could make it better. Um, I want people to be engaged when they're reading about me. Skills and accomplishments. No one, no one has ever gotten a job or lost a job because of the skills they list on LinkedIn. So again, this is another area that's more so for you than it is for other people. It's a great way to keep track of skills that are important, skills that you see around the industry, ones that you want to improve upon. I have like three key ones, right? Technical communication, leadership, and technical writing. And for my accomplishments, relevant courses are super important. You know, one of the most enjoyable courses that I took was my usability testing course, and that's hugely relevant to user experience. So I have interesting ones on your resume. You'll be able to describe key projects for some of those courses, but talk about the ones that are cool. Talk about the ones that make you comfortable to talk about, that you're able to share excitement around as well. I've got my awards on there that I'm very proud of. Languages, you know, again, I could probably take Spanish off of there, pero yo practico mucho. And then the organizations that I'm a part of. So keep things relevant. That's the last time I will say relevant. And then recommendations. This is my favorite part of LinkedIn. As a person that likes words and also really likes people, I love LinkedIn recommendations. So when should you ask people for recommendations? As a student, like right now, before finals, before you're gone, when people are still interacting with you, and they understand what's important to you, when you're aligned on goals. When can you read them? Like when you're looking for jobs, it's hard. It's lame and it can make you really sad. So when I need a little like pick me up, a little reminder of like how employable I am and why I'm going through all of this work, I read through my LinkedIn recommendations. You know, sometimes you need to listen to someone else to evaluate yourself in order to feel good about yourself. Love these. Ask your peers, ask your professors. If you have an internship, ask them. The worst thing that will happen is that they will say no or they'll ignore you. And it's nothing personal. Some people don't care about LinkedIn. Some people are never on there. So on the flip side of receiving recommendations, give them to people. I think it's really fun. And, you know, my personal opinion is that I value people that bring others up. So I try to do that. John did some awesome introductions. He called everyone fantastic and wonderful and rock stars. That makes me want to work with John more. It makes me want to hang out with him. So one thing as technical writers that I will really focus on is like proofread your recommendations. Everything that you put out there as a technical writer is a writing sample. If I am looking at someone and they have typos all over their LinkedIn profile, or their resume, I am probably not going to bring them in for an interview. That is a core competency of being a writer. And I say that because I have a typo in one of my LinkedIn recommendations. So it's not the end of the world, but just something to be mindful of. And again, these are kind of fun to read through. It's like, who are the awesome people that I've met? Amy, go ahead.
So I have a question about recommendations. I love what you're saying, and I realize that that's really underutilized in my own profile. I have a couple that I think professors wrote for me, but I didn't ask them to, so I really appreciate it. So now I'm thinking through who can I cycle or circle back to and ask them for that. As far as me giving recommendations, nobody has asked me specifically for that. So how would you recommend, like if I wanted to write a recommendation for somebody, is it best to like ask, can I volunteer that? Should I wait till they ask me? Like, what do you, like in your experience, what do you think works best?
That's a great question. And I'll give you two answers for this. So you all sound like people that have asked your professors for letters of recommendation, whether that's for a scholarship or an application or something like that. And generally, when you ask for a letter of recommendation, you give them the criteria for what you're asking them for, right? So you're saying this is for, Jane, I'm going to pick on you. This is for a scholarship, and they're looking for experience in technical communication and, you know, focus on these goals. So I think that within your peer group, you can tailor it to what you know their goals are. It's great if people ask you, but like, you don't need to wait to compliment someone to like say nice things about them. I do it when I think about them. So like Joe Yates, loved Joe Yates, loved working with him. But you know, these are from my last company. I wrote one about a month ago because I was thinking about like, man, Matt Cooper was really awesome to work with. I should tell him that. So you can just drop it on LinkedIn. You can go to their profile, leave a recommendation. And then what happens is it gets kicked to them in a message and they can read it. They can decide whether or not to add it, or they can ask you for revisions. So if you do that, you can also like write them a recommendation and follow up and say like, hey, you know, I was thinking of you and how great you are at XYZ. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to focus on. I'm glad I know you, something like that.
Okay, thank you for explaining. That's beautiful. I didn't realize that was a tool to utilize. So it's like when you think through what you enjoy about working with somebody, you can tell it to them, or you can tell it, you know, to their boss, but then this is a way to share it not only with them, but then to the wider audience to say, this person is great to work with and here's why.
Exactly.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the way that you summarized that. LinkedIn should hire you. So this is a good segue into, like, that's the profile. I'm going to pause really quick before I jump into this to see if there are any other questions. I will endlessly give you my opinion and personal thoughts on different things. But as far as the content of your LinkedIn profile goes, are there any questions? Cool. I drank some coffee. I'll keep an eye on the chat. We can always come back to them if they come into mind. Drop them in the chat and we can answer them at the end. So a proactive approach to LinkedIn. What does that mean? All of this credit for the next few slides go to my former internship coordinator, Mark Eisenberg. He was fantastic. He really helped me understand that LinkedIn, yes, is to help you keep track of your personal achievements, help you look at jobs, but also it's a great way to learn. So there are a lot of people on LinkedIn and they have a lot of information about themselves on there. And it's a fantastic way to learn about what people are doing, what organizations have different roles, what people that work at different companies are like, right? Before I started at Bevy, I looked at everybody's LinkedIn profile and I learned that all the people that work there are involved in some kind of community in some way. And it's like, that's really cool. But also, you know, even if you're not actively looking for a job, or even if you are, you can look at the jobs that are posted on LinkedIn and use them to create lists. So as you're looking through jobs, you can say, these are the skills that are important for this job title. From those, I have these skills. I don't have these skills. I don't want to have these skills. I want to grow in these skills. So it's great to just see what's out there, what people are looking for, what people are doing, right? So especially in technical communication, there's a lot of different titles that you can fall under: technical writer, technical communicator, content engineer, content operations, communications, there's all sorts, UX writer. So it's cool to look at different job titles and see how the skills overlap. So one thing that I've been looking at recently is like UX writing. There's a lot of overlap with what I'm already doing, or product education. And so it's just cool to see what's out there. It can also help you feel like more prepared as you're reading through job postings. You're like, oh, I can totally do that. I totally have those skills. I know how to use that software. I'm very optimistic. I use LinkedIn to hype myself up, but and then again, all the people on LinkedIn, you can talk to them. People really like answering questions about themselves, especially good questions. I will give you all a lot of credit as technical communicators that you ask really good questions and people enjoy that. So you can always find people. You can ask for some of their time to say, like, how did you get into this field? What kind of skills are really important? What should I be learning about? And sometimes people will ignore you, but so what? Like, they're not telling you that you smell bad. They're not being cruel to you. So you can kind of just like pick up and move along. But it's really cool, you know, look at people that share your alumni, that are alumni of your university. I know you're already connected to a lot of them through the FTC, but that can be a starting point. And also when you're looking at positions, say like, oh, I'm gonna go apply at Bevy and there's 2 people from my university that work there. I'm just gonna shoot them a LinkedIn message and say, hey, we went to the same university. I'm interested in working at your company. You know, is there anyone you can connect me with? Again, worst case, they'll ignore you or they'll say no, or they'll point you to the right direction. But again, people really want to help. People really want to answer questions. And hopefully you will be pleasantly surprised when you start talking to strangers. And again, like go look at, your profile is not a static thing. It's not something that you make and then move on from and never look at again. You should always be looking at it. You should be evaluating it within the scope of your goals, within your experience, within your priorities, and what you know. And you know, you can draw some inspiration from the way other people describe their experience. It's okay to be inspired as long as you're respectful. So I find it really interesting for people that have worked in tech at startups to see how they describe their experience. As a technical writer that wears many hats. How do they organize their responsibilities? How do they summarize them? How do they contextualize the projects that they worked on? One of the fun ones I have is, I forgot what it was. One of the people that went to my university that I know as an alum, they had so much fun on their LinkedIn profile. It's like, oh my gosh, I can use my voice on here. It doesn't have to sound like, you know, energetic, dynamic teams. And so that was like a big turning point for me, as I was like, oh, this is how other people do it. And they're still sounding professional. And your professional tone can change. You know, I'm in tech, I work in startups. I am way more casual than someone that works at IBM or Oracle. And I enjoy that. That's why I work in tech. So moving forward just a little bit, like, as you're thinking about your goals, as you're thinking about moving forward, feedback is really important. I had a really fantastic professor, Chris Jennings, and I went to the internship program and they were like, all right, before you apply for any internships, you need to update your resume. And I was like, cool, I can do that. I write stuff all the time. And then like a month later, I was like, I haven't done this. Why haven't I done this yet? This is so hard. This shouldn't be so hard. And Chris Jennings looked at me and he asked me, he was like, well, are you getting the feedback that you need? And I was like, yeah, totally. And then like a week later, I was like, no, I'm not. So I asked one of my classmates, one of my peers, I was like, hey, can you help me with this? And within 30 minutes, because she gave me the feedback of like, do I know enough about this to put it on my resume? Is this something important to have on your resume? I was done in 30 minutes. So discussing your goals with people that are close to you is important. You have a great peer group to have these conversations with. And you can always ask people for help, right? Smart people ask for help when they're stuck. People that aren't smart just keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again without any change. So LinkedIn is a good way to ask for help. You can even say, you know, I'm really interested in getting into this career. Can you offer some advice about X, Y, or Z? So being specific and respecting people's times. But like, again, the worst they'll say is no. So before we move into networking, I wanted to pause again and see if there are any questions. I love product evangelist. I think that is a very cool title. As a former phone wizard, I can appreciate cool job titles. But I'm going to drink a little bit more water. We'll hang out for like 30 seconds and see if any questions come up.
One I can ask is, what is a good rate, or like when and how often is a good amount to post on LinkedIn? Like, is it good to post once in a while to space things out, or post about just everything you do to get visibility? What would you recommend?
That's a good question. I think there's two sides of it, right? So LinkedIn, the more that you post, the more they promote your posts in the feed. So before we have like a Rocky Mountain chapter event, I will be active a few days leading up, like liking things, commenting on things. Maybe I'll share a thing or two. So that way, by the time I post what I want people to see, it will be promoted into their news feed. Otherwise, I mean, like, do whatever you want, honestly. I think it's easier for me to post things as they happen. But you can kind of manage your own content strategy for your LinkedIn if you want to. I think that's a good question. It's a little bit further out of the way. It's more sophisticated than the way I use LinkedIn, I would say. But FTC at UFC has really good content on social media. I have to say, they reached me. So
Yeah, we're happy that you reached us. And one other thing, when it comes to, I was wondering about the challenges that can be faced with just being on a platform where everything's visible. How to overcome any potential feelings of comparison, because I feel like that's something that can come up a lot, even during any networking.
Yeah, I think there's two things, right? So anytime that I walk into a room, no, I'll tell a story. I'll tell you the story of when I was on a student panel for like the CEIA, which is an organization of like interns, right? So it was me who was just like a tech comm student at Metro. There was a mechanical engineer who had just won like an engineering contest and a scholarship, and she was like the superhuman. There was an intern from IBM who is now a project manager, and there was a co-op student from Johnson & Johnson. And I was like, wow, look at these people. They're so impressive. And then I realized, I was like, wait, like I'm here with them. You know, I am connected to them. I'm one of them. So I think that when you start to compare yourself to others, you can also like give yourself credit. Like I'm connected to them. You know, we're kind of in the same wheelhouse. I'm sure that if they looked at some of the things that I do, they'd be impressed by it. Right? So that's the optimistic voice that I try to drown out the negative voice with in my head. But I also think like just don't take it too seriously. You know, everything on social media is everybody's best moments. And that's fine. It is not a source of truth. It is not gospel. It is not completely true. It's just one facet. So I always try to remember that people are not dots. They're full lines, right? Like there's more to them. I just get to see this tiny part of them. So I think that's a really good question, John. And sometimes if I just start to feel bummed out when I'm on social media, I get off of it and I go outside. Or I text my friends, which is really fun as well. So let's talk networking. All right. So what is it? What's it mean? So I'm going to ask for a little bit of interaction, right? So how many of you have been waiting in line for something or in a crowd for something, and you started to talk to someone? You know, maybe you had like the same shoes, maybe you were buying the same chips. Virtual hands, real hands. All right, I'm seeing lots of hands. You have talked to people before. Amy apparently has not. Awesome. Caleb, thank you for the interaction. So what is networking? Commonality is the introduction to connection. One of our Rocky Mountain members said this last night, but what that means is like networking is talking to people you have something in common with. That's how it starts. as a student, you have the same classes every single week all day long. And you're like, well, eventually I'm just going to talk to this person because they have the same interests as me. Or wow, that person has the same shoes that I have. Or wow, they have similar tastes to me. At Summit, I've seen this person in the same sessions that I've been in. We must have overlapping interests. So networking is really talking to people that you have things in common with. And doesn't that sound like way less scary? Way more approachable. So what's the point of it, right? Why are we talking to people? It's especially after 2 years of not talking to people, it's hard. But I try to think about networking as two things, right? So you get to learn about people, whether they are in the industry that you like, they're in positions that you're interested in. They have responsibilities that you think are neat. And on the flip side, what are they learning about you? So as students, it's important that when you meet people, you can tell them your area of interest and where you want to go, right? So be able to concisely explain to them, like, this is what I want to do. So that way, you're not talking to them because you want them to hire you at that exact moment, but you want to talk to them so that way in 8 months, they have a job opening and they're like, oh man, I remember John. He was great. I'm going to reach out to him. He expressed interest in being in this place. So it's not schmoozing. It's not trying to get people to hire you. It's not knowing people that know people. It's just talking about people that you have things in common with. So that way that information can be useful later on. So my first technical writing job I got because of STC. So Carrie Schaefer was our chapter president and I showed up at events, right? So she saw me showing up, being willing to help out, being interested, being excited. I have so much enthusiasm. Oh my gosh, so many exclamation points in my emails. Right. And so that's what Carrie knew about me. I told her that I wanted to get a job as a technical writer after I graduated. I told her that I was interested in software documentation because hardware documentation, no, not my thing. Doesn't make sense. That's why I married the man that I did. He can read lawnmower manuals all day long and they're great. And I can try to assemble a lamp and I get stuck. Anyway, so Carrie knew that I was interested in those things. I made a positive impression on her just by showing up and doing what I wanted to do. So in October, she emailed me and she was like, hey, I'm hiring for a junior tech writer. Do you know anyone that might be interested? Because she also knew that I was pretty well connected at my university. All of you are that. So I think it's great to explain, how you spend your time in a relevant way. There is value in the elevator pitch, but I don't want to call it that. The elevator pitch is like describing yourself in like 60 or 120 seconds, like enough time for an elevator ride. But to reframe that, just practice telling people what you want them to know about you, especially at a conference. Everyone's really busy. They might not remember it. It's okay to sprinkle in unique or memorable things, right? Like I work in tech and I have chickens and I live in the middle of the mountains and it's like 30 minutes to a grocery store. That's a little bit unique. So especially when it comes to talking to people you have things in common with, start there. And then expand and sprinkle in some of your interests. I am a student at, I'm sorry, y'all, Florida Central University of Central Florida. It's behind John. Thank you. I am about to graduate from my senior year. After I graduate, I'm looking for internships to fill my time before I start grad school. Bam. The areas I'm really interested in are software, community, tech, and video games. In my free time, I am an avid Twitch streamer, I'm an avid reader, and I'm an avid spelunker, right? Those hobbies are kind of fun. And that was just enough information, and it leaves room for people to ask questions as well. And then bam, you're in the middle of a conversation. Oh my gosh, you're unstoppable. So I married an introvert. I am an extrovert. I am like a big extrovert. COVID's been really hard for me, but I like to think of myself as an introvert's favorite extrovert. I'm really energized by other people, and I understand that not everyone feels that way. So what if you are not energized by people? What if it's really draining? Go in with your boundaries, you know. One-on-one conversation can be a lot easier. At Summit, there's a lot of introverts there as well. But they are there, they are welcome to conversation, and they're showing up for a reason, you know. Assume that people are at Summit because they want to talk to other people. And worst case scenario, they're going to say like, I don't have time right now, I've got to go. And then you learn about that person. So with that, that is my piece on networking. You know, what in the world is it? It's talking to people you have things in common with, and it's knowing what you have in common with people. Why are we doing it? So that way they know things about you. And eventually it might turn into opportunities, or it might just turn into more fun conversations. And that's all I got. I don't have any more fun GIFs. So I talked pretty fast. I was worried. I thought I was going to go over, but I've got 7 minutes of questions and maybe some answers. So I'll drink some more coffee now. Thank you, Zach.
And I also posted Eva's LinkedIn in the chat in case any of you want to connect with her.
Please do. Please really do.
Eva, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So if you are, I'll say like a career changer, and that could be, you know, relevant for hopefully not just me, maybe anyone in the future, if you want to like, maybe not even fully a career changer, but, you know, an industry changer, what would you say? Like, is that something that you could put in your LinkedIn? Do you know what I mean? Like, how would you?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for reading my mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. So in technical writing and technical communication, there's so many career changers. There's so many. And the way that you can leverage your LinkedIn is, again, to focus in on your skills. So you can go and you can find a job. I'm going to stick in the tech writing example because it's easier. No, let's do something fun. So let's say that I want to get into llama grooming from technical writing. And I'm like, geez, I don't know anything about llama grooming. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to find some job postings and say like, all right, I need to learn how to shampoo. I need to learn how to manage llamas. It's important for me to understand llama diets, so I don't feed them the wrong thing before I wash them, and llama blow drying. So I can say like, okay, well, I've never actually washed a llama, but I've washed my dogs because they're really gross. So I can focus in on those skills and put that in my volunteer experience, in my work experience. And so it's kind of that iteration of learning, translating your skills, and then if you can find volunteer experience doing that. As far as where that information goes, or you know, how you can put that on your LinkedIn profile, like put it in your about section up at the top, that little summary that shows up when people see your name. You can say, you know, technical writer transitioning into llama grooming, or looking to learn more about llama grooming. That's fun to say. And then you can contact llama groomers on LinkedIn and say, hey, you know, I'm really interested in getting into this field. You know, can you give me some advice? Or I don't have experience in this, you know, can you recommend opportunities to, you know, volunteer organizations or professional organizations where I can find that experience? Is that helpful? Cool. I got a thumbs up. And then Joanna, as far as a hotspot to obtain independent technical writing assignments or contract jobs, I would recommend, so there is LinkedIn. You can find contract jobs through that. I don't know as much about that. I am more of like an in-house tech writer, but I do know that through STC, there's a lot of people that focus more in contract writing. So one example that I think of is in the Rocky Mountain chapter, we have Kit Hostra Brown. I said that wrong, but I'll do it better next time. And she is like a superhero in the world of translation and localization, and she has her own consulting company. So you could look around through STC, you could look around through LinkedIn, and you could say like, who has their own consulting company, and talk to them about that. I think it's hard because, I don't know, I decided not to be a contract technical writer because I wanted to learn from someone and give them feedback. Contract writing was just higher stakes to me as a fresh grad. But I think that as you talk to more people and you understand that industry or that niche a little bit more, you would probably be able to get better guidance. But they post them on Slack pretty often. You know, I've had a few recruiters reach out to me about like a 6-month contract or something like that. So that was not a good answer to your question, but there are lots of resources that you can explore. And I'd be happy to connect you if you'd like as well. If you find anyone interesting, or if you have a specific industry of contract writing that you'd like to do, I could review my network and see if I know anyone that would have better answers. I appreciate you too. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? We're all going to be in Chicago. I'll be in Chicago. I really hope I'll get to talk to you. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn, hear more about your goals. I am happy to give you feedback however I can, right? So if you want feedback on your LinkedIn or your resume or your elevator pitch or anything like that, let me know how I can be helpful. And I am more than happy to share my time in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like our group is very much looking forward to meeting with you in Chicago. And from this group, there's going to be me, Caitlin, and Zach who are going, and then a few others too. So yeah, we'll be happy to keep the conversation going and maybe take some notes too and bring things back to FGC and just share with our group. So yeah, just thank you so much. That was so much great information and just very helpful and encouraging too.
Thank you so much. And I'll send you over my slides as well. There weren't a lot of words on them, but the GIFs. All right.
The GIF.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. And we very much look forward to just continuing to connect, and anyone feel free to connect with Eva on LinkedIn, and just she will be very just open to just continuing the conversation through there as well. And yes, if anyone has any further questions or follow-up, you can just reach out to her or even just in the FTC Discord, and we can just reach out to her that way. We can pull some questions, things like that. So yeah, that was fantastic again, Eva. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you soon. Good luck.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.